Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good mid-morning, wherever you are in the world. It's great to see you all, and thanks for joining us. We're actually due to have people coming in as I speak, because we're at the moment we've got 71 registrations for today's webinar from 15 institutions and across 9 countries, which is fantastic. And again, shows the real sort of breadth of the membership of the ICE. It also shows interest in the subject of today's webinar, which is billed as a hospitality or hotel industry global update from Mr. Steve Hood, who's of course Vice President of Research and a founder director of the STI Share Centre. Steve's an STI Share Centre, a long-time supporters of the ICE, and Steve kindly provides us with global updates on the hotel industry about every 6 months. He did his last one in December last year, and he's providing one now. And now more than ever, I think it's important to have these updates. Because of course, this situation out there is so volatile and so complex. We've got countries, maybe like the UK, who claim to be just coming out of COVID. We've got countries that are going into a 3rd and 4th waves of COVID and locking down, despite having imagined that they were coming out. We've got countries that have just kind of, possibly like Australia, that have locked down, but what's the future going to be? Because you can't lock down forever. Ultimately, you've got to open up your borders. So it's a really complicated, really dynamic situation. So I, for one, am very much looking forward to Steve's presentation today. But in addition, and I just wanted to emphasise this up front, because I've discussed with Steve, these updates and the support STI Share Centre provides. It's not just the updates, it's not just the data. STI is really keen to emphasise that they are really keen to support research opportunities and research activities based on the data they provide. I mean, it's a wealth of data. It's incredibly current. I know that Steve will be reporting on literally up to the minute statistics during today's presentation. So it's a tremendous resource for research, and frankly, we're just scratching the surface of what we could do with this data. So as we're going through this, and I know Steve would refer to this during the day, please consider how this might be developed for research opportunities. And I'm talking there probably about staff and maybe master student research, but also there's opportunities here for COVID-related student projects. And I know that again, during this particular time, institutions are looking for research projects because some of the more traditional sort of areas have perhaps dried up or on hold. So this again provides a tremendous area for student ideas. STI Share Centre also support virtual internships, and we'll be talking about this. And in relation to certification and training, which I think everybody knows about, that STI Share Centre provide. Well, again, during this period, STI Share Centre provide student certification on a virtual basis. So it's not necessary to attend these sessions in person. It can be accessed virtually. So all these elements are in addition considerations to what we will be speaking about, and I know Steve, I say, will be touching on each of these later on, but I just wanted to flag them right at the start. But anyway, without any further ado, I'll hand over to Steve, and I've got to say that it's so ungodly hour with Steve, and he's just come off a call from Singapore. He was saying he's just going into the day's events with the ICRI conference, which is in full swing at the moment. So particular thanks to Steve for finding time for us today in this busy schedule, Steve. I really appreciate it. Over to you, mate. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Craig. And no, it's great to be with you all. And not a problem. I was on vacation last week, and so I'm actually coming back from that. So Yeah, it's a great week, and you really nailed it in terms of the hotel industry update. Can everybody see my screen okay? Special webinar for the ICE.
Yeah.
That looking good? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to start with a global hotel industry update, and there's actually more slides in here. Obviously, we'll make this available to everybody. There are more slides in here than what I'll have time to actually go over real carefully, but I wanted to provide them in there and give you extra slides just because it is really complicated right now, and as you'll see, but definitely want to talk about research opportunities. As you're looking at these slides, keep in mind that all the data that you're looking at is available for you to work with, and more localized data. You know, I'm going to show some Asian data, but you know, I'm not going to show you detailed Philippines data or detailed data on Manila, but obviously that's stuff we can get for you. I'm looking at the participant list and see, you know, there are a bunch of y'all from Manila, and obviously, so keep that in mind. We have a relatively small group, so you know, don't hesitate if you have questions as I'm going through. Don't hesitate to ask, you know, to just come off mute, ask those questions as you you know, as we're there instead of going along. But I'll start with the industry update, then we'll talk a little bit about research opportunities, and with that, we'll talk about student projects. Obviously, this data is valuable stuff for students to be working with as well. And then in the final section, we'll talk a little bit about training and ways we can serve in the classroom, and you know, if you think about the Share Center, our major emphasis is promoting research and helping educators in the classroom, and we do that through student certifications. We have the CHIA, and then more recently we launched an advanced version, and many schools are using that for some sort of virtual internship alternative, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works as well. But let's go ahead and jump into a global industry update, and I looked at the participant list. I think most of you know STR and understand the company and what we do. We collect data from hotels all over the world. We get data from 70,000 hotels. We're selling that data back to them. We sell that data to the tourism organizations, to the consulting firms, and even vendors. But the good news is our Share Center program, highlighted at the bottom there, provides that data to universities essentially for free. There's a small membership situation, but I think most of the schools in the ICE are already members. So let me know if you'd like to be involved. If you're not getting that data on a regular basis, every school that signs up a group of professors. There's a primary contact. If you're not getting the data, it just means that your primary contact forgot to put your name on the list, or you might be brand new and you're not receiving that. You should be getting each one of you should be getting something from STR, a hotel review, which can be personalized based upon your area of the world. So it could be an Asia Pac review or a China review or something like that. You should be getting that each month with an update and data, sort of like the data I'm seeing here. So anyway, I'll talk more about ways we help later, but that's just sort of STR by the numbers. So I'm going to fly through this. You slow me down if there's something you want to talk about or a question that you have, don't hesitate. Obviously, a big story during the last year more has been the closures. Most of them have come back online. There's still some examples in specific areas where hotels are closed, but most of those have come back online. I've shown this before, no surprise, 2020, worst year in the history of the hotel industry. This shows the dark green number is the occupancy in 2020 compared to the light green number, the occupancy in 2019. So a place like Europe, 33 compared to 72, just tragic. Asia, 39 compared to 72. China hurting 49.66. Australia, Oceania, 45 compared to 74. That's not, of course, a surprise to anybody. Now let's jump up to June year to date, and from a monthly point of view, That's where our data is right now. The July data, July's just finishing up. July data will be available. The July monthly data will be available in 2 weeks, but June monthly data, this is where we're at. So this is June year to date, half a year of 2021, and look at where we're at. Obviously different, they're mixed results here, and many areas are up compared to 2020, but Europe, Asia, both down compared to 2020. Now, keep in mind that 2020 had, a couple normal months in it, and 2021 has not been stellar for, places like Europe and Asia, but it has been rebounding in other areas. Just like Craig was saying, it's really complicated right now, and so this is just sort of a regional look at that. Rate recovery. Now, one of the interesting things when it comes to rate in this particular cycle is in most areas of the world, rate has not been as significantly impacted as it was, let's say, in 2009 during the Great Recession. So now the numbers you're looking at here, let me just explain what we're looking at. This is ADR indexed to 2019. Now, we're doing a lot of things, post-COVID, when it comes to metrics and measurements. We're doing a lot of things we didn't do before. And one of them is this: we're indexing data compared to 2019. Think about it. Most of the time, traditionally, what did industry do? They measured performance with percent changes, percent change compared to last year. And then, and that was very, very helpful. But now, what happened in 2020? In 2020, the percent changes, you had percent changes like -50, -60, -70, -80. And then that's 2020. Okay, now you get into 2021. When you're at the bottom in 2020, what happens to your percent changes in 2021? Well, then you have percent changes of 200, 300, 400, 500. I saw a percent change of 800 for some market somewhere. And all of a sudden, those percent changes begin to lose meaning. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I did better because I had a 800 compared to your 600. Not really, because now what we're doing is we're indexing things back to 2019. So we're taking annual, we're comparing basically the data in 2021 indexed back to 2019 to see how close are we back. So 2019 is basically, we're using that as a baseline, and we're trying to measure, how close are these regions that you're looking at back to 2019 levels. And you can see a place like mainland China, 94% from an ADR point of view. So the ADRs in 2021, year-to-date June 2021, are 94% back to where they were in 2019. That's pretty close. In North America, 85. In Middle East, 88. So you see Australia, Oceania, 96. You can see, a lot of these places have, you're seeing hotels have held rate much better than in 2009, where, there were complaints about a whole lot of discounting, and that was a big challenge. Europe, of course, not too so much a surprise, a little lower at 77, Asia a little lower at 69, and we'll drill down and show you more about that. Now, here is RevPAR with the same thing. Now, if you're not super familiar with RevPAR is the revenue per available room. It's sort of a combination of occupancy and average daily rate. It's useful in that sense. But again, we're seeing index numbers. And this is simply June data. This is June year to date. This is just the month of June. And I want to show that to you, just to show you, you have a couple regions that are getting close to 90 when you're looking at June data. US is at 87, mainland China at 85, Middle East at 84. So complicated, just like Craig shared. But then you look at Europe, 43. You look at Asia, 34. It's different. And even if, we drill down into Europe, we're going to see, they're very different. UK behaving differently than other places. Asia, gosh, the story of diversity, and we'll drill down into these places in a minute. So, okay, so that's, you know, sort of an update where we're at. This is a timeline of those regions. So this goes all the way back to January 2020. You see the full time sequence of these various regions and the diversity there, and you know, some regions, you know, near the bottom, some regions, North America, Middle East, a little higher. Asia Pac is a combination of China and everywhere else, so it's all in there in one. And this again, this occupancy is indexed to 2019. Here's ADR indexed to 2019 timeline for the whole thing. So you can see, you know, ADR a little closer. You know, you're at the worst part of the time you were in the 60s. Excuse me, but you know, many of these areas have come real close back up to 100 over time. You know, unlike the occupancy where the index is, you know, for many areas at points in time it was down to 10% and way down and taken a lot of time to come back up. So that's sort of a big picture view. Now, I'm going to try to pick up the speed a little bit, go through some of these even quicker. I have a fair amount of data on various regions. Here's Asia Pac. And what do you see here? Just look at the diversity of that timeline for Asia Pac. This is occupancy index to 2019, all the way back to January 20, up to just July 18th. So that's, you know, almost last week, and you can see the diversity over time for the countries in Asia. Big, you know, wide variations from Thailand, which unfortunately has been near the bottom throughout this time period, to places like Singapore that have, you know, been near the top. Now, you know, we'll talk about Singapore in a minute. Unfortunately, that's been a lot of contract business, so the ADR has not been real strong in a place like Singapore. But the big story in Asia is the diversity, and again, adding to the complication story. This just shows you, you know, we break down the Asia into 4 different subcontinents, and this shows you the difference between the 4 different subcontinents. And you're looking at the dark green is 2021 year to date compared to 2019 year to date. It's the light green, and 2020 is in the middle. So you can see here, you know, Northeast Asia, you know, 50%, almost back to the norm of 70%, and Australia, Oceania, 2021 is looking, you know, at least better than 2020. But in Southeast Asia, that's not the case. In Central South Asia, they're pretty much on par with 2020. So absolutely diverse. Now, this was something that came out of our Singapore office. Our head of Asia is Singapore, our headquarters there. We have, you know, a bunch of offices all over Asia, but our headquarters is in Singapore. And this was real helpful. I was working with our Jesper is our head there, and going through, and he was just helping me to understand, you know, recent growth. We have places like India, Macau, Maldives climbing back up. Holding at various levels: China, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Philippines, all, you know, these areas somewhat stable. Recent decline, we've had declines in Australia and Indonesia recently, which I'll show you, and then continued very low demand. And that's sort of the story of ASEAN. I'll show you some Thailand data, and then Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Fiji, you know, all really hurting. So that's, you know, that's a quick look around. I'll show you data just to back that up. Here's China data in the dark, you know, the black line. You see some improvement in Macau. Of course, that was a travel corridor that opened up between Macau and the mainland. That really helped, and there was a little second wave there, and then it's bounced back up. So you can see Macau is up to 75% occupancy just last week. Hong Kong slowly making it back up. You know, if you ask a hotelier in Hong Kong, they'll complain about it, but you know, it's been worse. Taiwan really hurting right now, and I think that's a second wave, or you know, what everybody's got counting waves. It's another wave in Taiwan, and that's sort of what's going on there. A couple quick things to share with you. In China, one of the big stories, the high-end hotel demand is back. This is over the last couple weeks. And look at luxury and upper upscale. You know, you're exceeding, oops, and I moved that around a little bit, and the line went over, and but you're getting back to 2019 levels in the luxury and upper upscale hotels. And same with ADR. You're getting back to 2019 levels in China. Great news for China. Now, you've heard, I'm sure, in Guangdong, you know, there's been an outbreak, and you can see that Shenzhen and Guangzhou have been impacted. But then look at Shanghai, and that's the light green, and you can see Shanghai, you know, really on a roll. A lot of tourism coming into Shanghai, even though Shenzhen and Guangzhou have been impacted. But you know, it hasn't really impacted the whole country number as much as people might think. In Beijing, we're seeing business demand is back. This is Beijing data broken down by the various submarkets in Beijing, and you know, some of those heavy business markets are coming back to 2019 levels, which is great news. Northern Asia, you see, you know, obviously Japan significantly impacted with the Olympics going on now, but you know, that data is moving up slowly in Japan, and you know, sort of coming out of that. South Korea, again, sort of coming out of that. Maldives obviously had a great end of the year. Tourism turned back on, and but then, you know, then dipped afterwards. Now you can see in July here, June and July, Maldives has come back on, and it's back, getting close back up to 70%. India coming out of the wave there, and back to 60, almost 60%. Sri Lanka still sort of at the bottom, unfortunately. And here's ASEAN. You see Singapore at the top. I mentioned that before, but that's mainly government contract business, very low ADR for that. Philippines, similar situation up there as well. Look at the dive in Indonesia. I'm sure you've read about that as well, and that's all an outbreak going on in Indonesia. But then, unfortunately, look at the other ASEAN countries, and they're all back, you know, down to the 20% level when it comes to occupancies. And this is raw occupancy. I'm sorry, I have to, you know, read the fine print a little bit. Raw occupancy, not index. So a lot of the Asian countries are very hard hit. In the news, I'm sure you've read about the Phuket sandbox that opens in July. You can see that's actually moving the needle a little bit for that specific market, but it's going to take time. And but it's a positive sign as far as Thailand is concerned. So we'll have to continue to watch that. Obviously, a lot of places are watching that. You know, Sri Lanka and a lot of these other areas are watching that. And then I'm sure, you know, no surprise, a dip in Australia, and you know, with outbreaks there and restrictions, June and July have dipped down. Not impacting New Zealand as much. The bubble, interesting, really didn't, you know, move the needle much. and I can't remember exactly the date of the bubble, but I think people thought that there might be more travel back and forth, but not as much impact as you might think. And here's a quick look at some of those Australian lockdowns, really hitting the big markets and the capital cities there. And again, in any of these examples, we can get you more data if you'd like, so please let me know. Any questions? I know we have a heavy Asia Pac audience. Any questions there as far as Asia Pac is concerned? Let's jump into Europe and keep going. So we'll take questions at the end too. This is just a line graph of Europe throughout the entire time period. I show the major markets in here, major countries, excuse me, and you can see this is occupancy index back to 2019, just up until last week, and you can see some outliers here. You see Russia. After the New Year, Russia was sort of singing to their own tune there, and was different. You see UK in here as well, and you see Turkey. Turkey again, a little bit of an outlier there, but then you see UK opened back up in May of 2021, and you can see it's really outperforming most of the other countries in Europe. You can see some bright signs there. Poland moving up, and you can see in June, July, you see, like really the whole pack, starts moving up since May. And, but again, we're just up, most of those areas are heading to 50%. And we're going to be obviously watching that stuff closely during the rest of July, heading into August. But you notice if you look back at August of last year, we're on track to definitely beat August of last year, where most of Europe was in the at least 50% occupancy range. We're definitely on track to beat that. And then of course the question is, what's going to happen after August this year? Will that be different? This was interesting coming out of Israel. In the news, of course, you saw heavy vaccinations in February and March for Israel, really boosted occupancy there, and significant impact. Just showing you a few other. Italy coming out of this is just since the beginning of the year. Look at the various destinations, many tourism destinations coming out of Italy, and definitely heading back for when you're looking at daily data in Italy. Beach sides, obviously big tourism destinations. Here are a bunch of European beaches, and look at the growth here. This is just week over week. So for the week ending July 4, then July 10, and July 17, and you can see these areas are definitely gaining steam. As just even as we're looking at weekly data, and then look at, this has always been interesting. So here we're looking at occupancies. Many of them are getting back up to 60%. But now look at the ADR, and these ADRs are back, and you're looking at that line there is the sort of an average ADR for most of these areas, and that again, some of these areas they are not discounting at all, and that's been a very interesting phenomenon. Great research idea when you look at that as well, and look at some of the leisure markets in the UK, and this again shows you how the UK is really outperforming a lot of these areas. But some of these leisure areas are looking at occupancies close, up into the 90%. That basically means these places are full, and so great things going on in certain areas, and of course not so great in other areas. Now, one of the things we do, in addition to everything I've shown you up to this point, has been historic data, but we do look out into the future. We collect business on the books, reservation data into the future. And this is looking at reservation data all the way out to October. And here in UK, we split that by London downtown, and then regional data. And of course, we've seen regional UK outperforming London during most of this time period. We also, of course, see the weekend trends in here, and you know, weekend getaways have been the thing. But when you look at that reservation data, good news is, you know, you're looking at some, you know, fairly good performance out in time, and we have that data from most areas of the world as well. And here we're looking at reservation data for Spain, leisure destinations in Spain. The islands have been really good. You know, it's interesting. People just feel safer going to an island than they do to a big city. No, shouldn't be a surprise, I guess, there. But again, half decent reservation data out there as well. And if you look even farther out, here are major cities in Europe, and you can see a lot of big events. One of those events is actually Edinburgh. It's the climate change conference in Edinburgh in November. You can see Edinburgh is, you know, half booked. Glasgow, which is specifically where the conference is being held, is 90% booked. So you can see people are making reservations for these, and you're beginning to see the return of some events. Now, it's not the conferences and everything going on, but it's still some positive news there. And again, that's interesting data to work with. We had somebody joining us from Dubai. I at least saw somebody, and you know, here's some Mideast data. This is that timeline again, and you can see, boy, talk about diversity. Just like Asia, you know, a lot of diversity in the Mideast. You see, you know, places like Qatar, places like, well, this is Mideast and Africa, excuse me, you know, United Arab Emirates and Qatar on top of that. When it comes to an occupancy, and this is indexed back to 2019, you can see a lot of these areas actually outperforming, you know, in the last couple of months, outperforming their 2019. So, you know, in certain areas in the Mideast, things are back for sure. So you see Qatar, you see Saudi, United Arab Emirates, and you see, interesting, Nigeria, and I didn't pick that one up. So that's interesting. But again, many of these areas still down, you know, near the bottom, South Africa and Kenya. So big story of diversity, especially when you're looking at Mideast and Africa together. This is something interesting. The business on the books data, that reservation, and we call it forward start because it's forward looking. You're beginning to see pickup for the Expo Dubai. That was sort of slow to come. You could tell people were a little reluctant, but you begin to see some reservation data coming in for the Expo Dubai, for the Expo in Dubai. So that's interesting. We looked at Central and South America, and you can see some glimmers of hope there. But Lima has actually had some, you know, some good signs recently, but you know, a lot of other areas like Buenos Aires heavily impacted there. You know, these are the capital markets trying to get back, but interesting when you look at beach markets in this area, you know, some of them are not doing bad, and back to you know, at least back to subnormal areas. Cusco still waiting for international arrivals, but look at Rio and some of these areas. Again, you know, tourism is open in some of these areas, and it's really just a reluctance of the traveler to get there. We look ahead to North America, and you can see the big story in North America is just the ease of, you know, how easy is it to get there. If you look at the Form 8 with 3 countries and 1 region, you know, Canada the most impacted, and that's been, you know, the travel and people actually getting there. Caribbean the next most impacted, then Mexico, and then the United States. You know, Mexico, it's been a little easier to get there, and those flights are going. You know, people heading to, you've seen maybe stories in the news, people getting to Cancun, and they're open for business, and so it's really some differences here. I'll share with you some U.S. data, and US is sort of like UK. Some of the things are looking really, really good here. Just last week, we broke 70% occupancy. That's the first time since October 5th of 2019. And that's a total country number. And when you look at the total country for US, you got to realize that some of the big cities like New York and Chicago and LA, they are still hurting. They're still, doing, they're still feeling some impact. And so you got to realize that 71% has that big city data in there, which has a lot of influence because of the size of those markets, along with all the smaller destinations and the resort destinations and the vacation spots. And so that 71 is a fairly good achievement here. So that's positive signs coming out of the US. This was an interesting look, and it's just a great way to look at data, weekend versus weekday. And of course, this is, we're talking everywhere in the world. We're talking, this is domestic drive-to business, and the weekends are making it happen here in the US. Weekend occupancy is 79% compared to weekday occupancy of 62%. So that's the case everywhere in the world. ADR, look at some of the index data, the last 3 weeks in the US, we're beating 2019 levels. So we're up above that in the US, and that's a great sign. I used to show these charts. This is a big timeline all the way back to 1990. And I showed these charts and before, and you looked at the 2009 dip and then the 2001 dip and then back to the 92, 93 dip. And I stopped showing them because 2020 was just so enormous. But look at what you're seeing. This is, now, when we show these charts, this is demand and supply. So rooms available, which dipped, and that's mainly in the US due to the closures, but they're back online now. Hotels have actually opened and during 2020, and they're opening now, so we're beginning to see an improvement. But look at the demand number, it's back to about -10%. So you can see this recovery, no rounded off recovery here in this cycle. It's down and back up quick. But recovery will be very different in different areas of the world. And here, when we're looking at occupancy and ADR, occupancy down, but look, ADR not nearly as down as much, and look at them rebounding. And when they're coming back together. In most of these cycles, look at 2009, there was a good 6-month lag between the occupancy recovery and the ADR recovery. And here, you can't even see the difference between the lines. They're coming back together, much more like 2001. Talk about an interesting research idea, comparing this cycle to the prior two cycles and the behavior there. So interesting possibilities, not just for US data anywhere. Obviously, one of the big stories is group business, and this just shows you the group rooms being sold on a monthly basis in the US actually died in March and April of last year. Very slow. What are we showing there? In April, May, and June of 2021, we're beginning to see group business return. We did sell 3 million rooms in group business in the US. That's a pandemic record. What we're hearing is small groups are coming back. The weddings have returned. The sporting type events have returned. But now small groups are returning, and small conferences are returning. So anyway, that's sort of look and update. I wanted to try to take you around the world real quick. There's some slides in here related to recovery, and what the big story for recovery is the fact that it's going to be complicated. And I have in here certain countries that I've picked out, the different differences in those countries. I have more on recovery. If you'd like that, let me know. Keep in mind when we're talking recovery, this just looks at the demand, the raw room nights sold, and when will that get back to 2019 levels. But there's a lot of metrics that have to recover: occupancy, then ADR, RevPAR. So it's going to be very different in different areas of the world. And of course, one of the things that puts pressure on that is the supply. A type of data we track are hotels in the pipeline. These are hotels either under construction or in some stage of planning around the world. And just look at, these countries in Asia and look at the number of hotels that are in the pipeline, and they're due to open in the next year or two. Now, many of these projects have been deferred, much less, there's been a much smaller rate of abandonment where the owner or investor just says, oh, geez, I changed my mind, I'm not going to even try, because why? They're relatively confident that the business is going to return. They're just having to be patient. So that's a lot of activity in the pipeline. Now, a couple of ways I can help. These are presentations that I created in 2020. I started creating these bright spots in the storm because, the thing I began to see was that every student, every professional sort of had the misconception that all hotels were doing awful in 2020. And I began to see a lot of signs that that's not the case. This just, I kept building this. So when I started this presentation, it's a PowerPoint that as I said, I can get to you if you want to use it in the classroom. There are a lot, it's just not the case. There were a lot of examples where it wasn't. Here's one example: not all hotels are created equal. Even during the worst times, there were still, a small group of hotels that had occupancies greater than, really high, greater than 60%. And again, not all destinations are created equal. Here's like Sanya in China, that's a hot resort destination. It had short haul travel into that destination, so you could fly there from other places in China. Sanya beat their 2019 performance record in 2020. So in the midst of a pandemic, here's a place that actually beat last year's data. Their RevPAR was up 6%. And look at all the other examples of areas that did relatively better. The Maldives at the end of the year, Darwin, Sochi, Algarve, there are a lot of bright spots in the midst of this. And this is important for students to understand. Students could be depressed, like, oh, I picked a career in hospitality, my life is over. Well, no, it's just, you got to reinvent yourself and look outside the box a little bit. And that's the story there. Another presentation, lessons learned. And as I said, we're doing a lot of things differently than we did prior to COVID, and this just goes through and shows a lot of those examples. And this was one that I showed you before. So that's a little bit as far as an update is concerned. Let me pause now, and I have a few more slides to show you about research and student projects and the training. But I wanted to take a minute there if there are questions regarding the industry data. Let me come back and just see, do we have any questions? I'm going to jump into chat and take a look at that as well. Good. Recording is available, and we'll get you, of course, the deck if you'd like to be able to use that as well. Any questions? Great to see everybody on here and see a lot of familiar faces or familiar names. Great to have you join us. Any questions regarding the data? Feel free to put those in chat, or just come off mute if you'd like. Let me keep going. If there are no questions, I'm going to jump back to where we were. Let's talk a little bit about research opportunities.
Steve, we've just got a question came in on the chat. Just right as you switch.
Oh, perfect. Can you translate that to me, Craig?
Yeah, sure can. Are the major cities doing poorer because they depend more on international.
Yes, that's a really good point. Obviously when I share a deck, I'm starting with a deck of, hundreds of slides and have to figure out a way to pare it down based upon the time. But yes, and that's a great story there. The big international cities, especially the travel hubs, have been significantly more impacted. If you look around Europe and you look at, places like Paris and Amsterdam, and those big cities are significantly more impacted. You saw that one slide where I shared London versus regional. It's been an interesting phenomenon. The same thing with Australia during 2020. If you looked at the big cities compared to the smaller cities are doing much better. People feel much safer going to those regional areas. If they're a small city or if it's a rural area, that's they're looking much better. I joked with kids when I'm talking to kids outside the US, and I said, you have not heard of the hot destinations in the US in 2020, because nothing's happening in Miami Beach, but Myrtle Beach is doing great. Myrtle Beach, where's that now? And it's not been Orlando, but it's been Gatlinburg, so those smaller cities, the rural destinations, that's really been the story throughout the world during this situation. Great question, and what a great research idea and student project idea as well. Good. Any other questions? And I have data in there, so I'll be glad to share some of those slides and add some of those slides in. The slide you're looking at right now is just our Share Center and the mission of our Share Center. I think most of you are familiar with that. One of the big ways that we try to help is when it comes to promoting research. These are all the different types of data that we make available. So if you have research needs, reach out to us. We'll set up a time to talk. Dwayne, my colleague, is the one that focuses on that, and he'd be more than glad to set up a time to talk. You can talk about your research ideas and your needs, and we could talk about the data available. We have new data coming out, forward-looking data that I showed you a little bit. We have monthly P&L data coming out. We were recently, in 2019, we were acquired by a huge real estate company called CoStar, and we have huge amount of real estate data that's now available to look at, and some really exciting stuff there. We do roundtables. During this summer, we had a series of 5 different research roundtables to promote research in specific areas. We've done one in hotel operations, meeting and events, and tourism. We still have 2 roundtables scheduled, one on revenue management and then one on accounting and finance. So, and this is where we bring people together and we brainstorm on specific topics. That's the kind of thing we do when it comes to promoting research. Our data, if you're not familiar, has been, this is an example of raw data. Lots of different types of data. This is just one of the more popular types of data. You can pick a group of hotels anywhere in the world. We'll give you data all the way back as far as we have it. In most areas, we have data back to the 1990s, and we can give you monthly data forward, or we can give you daily data forward. If you're a tourism professor trying to track a special event, think about how valuable the daily data is. You can look at what went on during every day of that event, and you can look at the Olympics and understand, begin to drill down into the occupancy and the average daily rate, and you can look at various groups of hotels. You can see, hey, how did it impact the luxury hotels, or how did it impact the downtown hotels compared to the suburbs? And the ideas are endless. So that's what we do. The data is available upon request. You can request that data for any group, user-defined group of hotels. You pick a group of 4 or more hotels anywhere in the world, we'll send you aggregated data. But important to understand for research, we also make unidentified property data available. And that's very valuable. Researchers use that and they correlate that data with third-party data. Maybe they're getting data from TripAdvisor and they can correlate the unidentified property data to the TripAdvisor data. We help you do the matching. And, you know, we're working with somebody now who's using TripAdvisor data to pull out technology, performance of hotels, and then they're correlating it to whether or not those hotels are outperforming their competitors. So, you know, you would think hotels that emphasize technology probably outperform the hotels that that don't. Is that true or not? Survey data, you know, so you can correlate it to any survey. We can help you pull off a survey. We have generic email addresses in our hotel database, and you can send out a survey and you can ask specific questions and then take the responses and then correlate it to the property data. We help you match it up so you can correlate responses to your survey to performance. Are they, you know, hotels that have better management styles, or do they outperform or not? Maybe not. Gender, you know, somebody did one on gender diversity, and so all kinds of possibilities. Bottom line is, if you have ideas and you think, you know, we might be able to help you, let us know. That's one of our missions. So it's, you know, no charge for that. It's just a part of the membership. We try to get it to you, you know, easy. It's Excel, so you can do anything with it. Stress anywhere in the world. You know, we'll show you who participates. If you know, if we have somebody from you know, a remote area of the world, we can show you. It's not confidential to show you who participates. Now, the data is confidential, but again, we can give it to you in an unidentified format, and we can tell you how that works and show you how you can use that. But the opportunities are limitless, and one of the big things we've seen coming out of COVID is there are just so many questions, and here's just a small list of some of the examples of the questions coming out of COVID, comparing, you know, what's going on, you know, performance in different areas of the world or in different types of hotels, and how are the boutique hotels doing compared to, you know, big box luxury meeting and event hotels, and I mean, just, you know, how did this particular cycle compare to other cycles? The discounting has been a big story, and labor has been a big story. Just so many opportunities. So please let us know if we can help. We'd be more than glad to sit down and talk with you about that. You know, one of the things that Craig and I have been bouncing around was just a roundtable, especially for the members of the ICE, to brainstorm on potential research opportunities. How do we work together? You know, potentially look at collaboration ideas, and you know, and get some of the you know, professors from various ICE member schools together to brainstorm on potential ideas. We'd be glad to set up a time to do that. And we've noticed, and part of the reason we did the roundtables this in the last couple of months was we saw sort of a decrease in the amount of research that was coming out of academia in the midst of COVID, and that's not a surprise. Gosh, you know, professors are you know, dealing with a lot right now. So we tried to really jumpstart that during the summer with these roundtables. We'd be glad to help any way we could. Our data has been featured in you know, well over 500 different academic articles. These are all peer-reviewed journal type articles that have utilized STR data. Here's some high profile tourism examples, but you know, I can give you the whole list of all the articles that have come out of here. I'm trying to see if I recognize any names that are in our audience. I don't immediately, but you give a shout out if you see something you've done on there. And you know, a lot of, you know, STR data has been utilized, and that's of course one of our big one of the big goals of what we do. Any questions about research opportunities that you might ask?
Question come in from Marika, Steve.
Yes.
Is the data available on a regional basis in Australia?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, our data, of course, we're in Australia, we do benchmarking for the Australian government. What's the name of that? I forget exactly the name of that program, but yeah, so we have great data in Australia. Data in Australia is neat because we collect data on more than just hotels. It's the only place where we collect data on campsites and less traditional lodging. So yeah, so that, the data in Australia is fantastic, and let's set up a time to talk more about that. And again, that's a great example. And boy, the stories in Australia, the promotion of domestic tourism and Australia was just a lot of great stories going on there. Big emphasis on domestic tourism and the regional smaller cities outperforming the big cities. And you have a place like Darwin, which did great, and all kinds of interesting things to pull out of that. Yeah, that's a great question. Perfect example of a huge opportunity. So would love to help you on that. Any other questions there? Thanks, Craig, for helping with those.
There's no more questions at the moment, but
okay.
Again, I'm encouraging folks to ask if you've got anything.
One more thing I wanted to cover. This really sort of switches from the research to the classroom, and most of you are familiar with the fact that we do provide certification training that schools can offer in the classroom. And these are certifications related to analytics. That's of course what we do, but it's a popular topic right now, and since we launched it. Now, we launched these certifications based upon the input of professors just like yourself, who said, hey, we need, can you create some sort of industry recognized stamp of approval for our students? So when they graduate, they can add that to the resume and say, hey, we understand the terminology, we understand the formulas and the methodology, we understand how to read data and how to use that data to make strategic decisions in a hotel or in a market if they're more into tourism. And so, we launched those back in, first one was back in 2012. And the testimonials we've received since then from students have been incredible. Now, we provide for these certifications, if you're not familiar, we provide a school and a professor with everything they need to pull it off. You get the PowerPoint, the quizzes, application exercises, which are optional. You don't have to use them. The data to support that. Videos, and that's one of the big things we changed in 2020. We made videos. We updated some that already had them, but we made new ones for them. So basically, a professor can pull this off, with minimal effort. You could make the videos available, have the students read the videos. If you want to, they can then come to a class, virtual if you want, and you can review the video, see if they have questions. You could do an exercise or assign an exercise if you want to, but they're optional. They're quiz questions that can help them prepare for the exam. Then, of course, they take the exam. We run the Train the Trainer sessions all the time. The CHIA Train the Trainer session runs about once a month, and we're doing those online now. So, and we can send you the videos. Just let us know if we can help. The CHIA was launched in 2012, and it's been obtained by nearly 35,000 people. That's students, professors, and industry professionals. We launched it in 2012. By 2013, the hotel companies that started hiring these students came to us and said, wait a minute, we want this for our our staff as well. So we make that available to industry professionals all over the world. Now, in 2019, we launched an advanced version of the certification. I noticed, many of the schools that are on here are offering this, and you're welcome to jump in and share how you're doing it, and any kind of helpful information to the rest of the audience. But The kata focuses on the most popular types of hospitality and tourism research. And so it's much more applied. And in both certifications, students have to pass an exam. With the kata, they also have to do a project, which many of you have done. But the cool thing about the kata is it's teaching the students how to do an industry quality research project. Comprehensive steps are included, there are case scenarios in there, and there are templates that the students use. For each of the 4 projects, they have a template. So when they do their project, they get data for whatever area they're studying. So they're getting data for Sydney, and then they copy and paste that data and they put it in the template. And so the templates become incredibly valuable. It helps them do their project, but they take that with them to their new employer. And these kids look like incredible rock stars when they're at an interview and they pop open their laptop and say, hey, let me show you the market study I did last semester at Anglis. It's like, they are blowing the socks off their interviewers. They're not used to seeing that kind of quality, and your kids just look like rock stars. That's our whole goal in life, is to make your kids look way more intelligent than they really are. Just joking. Here's the outline of the CHIA. This is the more basic one. We cover analytical foundations, math fundamentals, property data, and how to analyze that property data to make strategic decisions in a hotel. Industry data, how to utilize the market level data to make strategic decisions in a market or a country for a tourist type person. Here's the outline for the kata. You can see we teach students, how to do a market study, how to do an event impact analysis, how to do an economic analysis, and how to do a feasibility study. You can see these are not lightweight versions. These are industry quality versions. When your kids learn this stuff and they go to a company, I can almost guarantee you that the level of these projects that they've learned to do are better, at least as good as what that company is currently doing. And in a lot of cases, they're going to be teaching the people in the company how to do that. Oh, finishing up here, we're almost down on time. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm a little over. Let us know. We do the market study competitions. We're doing them around the world. We do have a special competition for the schools in the Philippines this year, hosted by LPU, and I think they're on. And we have a Spanish speaking one, an Eastern Europe one, and then we have the global one. So this year we are virtual again. Next year we hope to be back to in person. And one last thing to mention is, if you'd like to talk about internships, many schools are utilizing our training, like the CHIA and the kata, to help pull off a virtual internship alternative. And the goal is, and obviously the problem is, so many of these internships have dried up. We've had schools come to us and say, hey, could you help us do some internship related to research? And it's great. Instead of gaining hands-on experience working in a hotel, they get hands-on experience in working with live hotel data. And now there has to be a facilitator. They have to create a problem. They have to, in some cases they've created more, if it's a big requirement, they do more than one project. We provide all the data for that. We can help hold your hand. As I mentioned before, we do free train-the-trainer sessions for both the CHIA and the kata. The CHIA runs once a month, the kata runs every other month. So we can help you pull that off. If you're interested in that kind of thing, let us know and we'll get together and we'll talk about that. So sorry, went over just a little bit, but any other questions?
Yep. Absolutely fine, Steve. We've got a little bit of time. Got a question in which I suspect to know the answer to from Diosdado from the Philippines. Do you have hotel data from the Philippines? But probably maybe if you could say just the wealth of the data and the specificity of the
yes
data.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have great data in the Philippines. Most of the I'm looking forward to getting back to the Philippines, but great data on Manila, Cebu, Davao, Baguio, you name it, and we'd be more than glad to get you get you samples of that data and show you how practical that is. And of course, that makes it relevant for your students. You want them to be looking at data for, areas that they're familiar with. And you can take a place like Manila and you can see how are the luxury and upper upscale hotels, the big boxes in Manila, impacted compared to, the mid-scale. And then look at the economy. Economy hotels have been much less impacted. So you can help them through that. And you begin to get them thinking the way an industry person thinks, and looking at the data the way the industry looks at the data. So when they walk into that interview, their heads and, they're heads above the other students, and they can talk smart, and they can look, they can speak the lingo, and that's part of our goal. Like I said, we try to help you make your kids look like rock stars, and that's our whole goal. Somebody asked about staycations. That's a perfect example. I mean, staycations, so many things gained a whole new level of respect during COVID. Think about it, staycations, weekend getaways, and you saw people, because it was drive-to business, you saw, the booking window was up to a week or two, and what an interesting change in behavior. And then, think about that coming out of COVID, with the weekend getaway, you saw the weekend business in UK. And how will that look, next year? How did that look coming out of the recession? I think you'd see, the weekend getaway trend was different coming out of 2009, all kinds of great opportunities there. But that's definitely been the case. Lots of Australia data. I caught that one too. And Brian, thanks so much. I appreciate you join us, and Hong Kong Poly has made the CHIA compulsory, and many schools have done that. It's compulsory at a lot of the top programs around the world, and we're honored to really be working with you on that. As I said, everything we do is really a group, is a group project. We're teaming with you to try to pull this off, and we're working on things now. Just in the future, we're working on a training program called Visualizing Hotel and Tourism Data, and teach, where a teacher could use this training program to demonstrate how to use programs like Tableau and BI, two very powerful data visualization programs, but how to use it with hotel data. We're seeing that's a big need among the hotel companies. Unfortunately, they no longer want students that know Excel. They need more than that. And so, here's a program to use that you can use to teach Tableau or BI to your students, and so those are the kinds of things we're working on. But if you have a need or a thought or an idea, please reach out to me and let me know, and we'd love to work with you. And the ICE is such a great group of schools that it'd be really fun to do projects together. As I said, research collaboration, or a new training program, something special focused on or a project or a competition. And we're getting ready to do something together, which is exciting too. But please let us know if you have ideas, or if there are ways we can help. Paul, thanks for joining us. You probably jumped off already.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much, Steve. I mean, I don't know how many of the updates I've seen, but every time that you present, I'm entertained and I'm informed, and I always see something else. And what really jumped out of me in this session, Steve, was that ability to not only drill down nationally, but by region and even within cities. I mean, I noticed you've got statistics there for CBD Beijing, for example. And so go drilling down to that level, and then being able to compare weekend versus a week occupancy and different types of hotels. I mean, it's incredible, sort of like complexity of the data, and incredible sort of degree of detail you can get within there. So fantastic. I mean, it really jumped out to me this time.
I mean, the UK data, think about the UK data, you know, the various destinations in the UK. I mean, there have been some destinations that have really done well in the midst of all this going on. And so
Yeah.
you can study beach destinations. What type of beach destinations have done well? And what's the travel, you know, what's the travel in a drive-to world? You know, what's the travel time sensitivity, you know? Yeah, well, people will go to Bournemouth, you know, people will go to Bath but not Manchester, you know, all kinds of different things. The restrictions in the UK, I thought this was incredible. At one point in time, I don't know, are they still on, Craig? The restrictions, the tiers, tier one.
They are. They've just recently been removed in the UK. They're still on in Scotland. We're everywhere's tier 0, but there was that strange situation at one point where England was different to Scotland, and you actually were creating a national border between the two because of the differences in restrictions, and that's all fascinating stuff. I mean, it's great.
It was neat because I saw evidence that the public ignored that. It's like, we don't care what the restriction is. We're, you know, if we want to go to Oxford, we're going to Oxford. It's a pretty place to go. So you may call it tier 4, which was the worst possible place, but people still went, you know, it's like, it's just, you know, small stories like that. So please, anything you can think of and any way we can dig deeper on that, please let me know.
The other thing that jumped out, and I think this is for a real interest to everybody, is the fact that certain areas are doing well through this crisis and continue to do well. And so in terms of identifying potential employment opportunities or internship opportunities for your students, and please do inform the staff dealing with those things that it's not the whole industry that's impacted. There are areas that are doing very well, and they need to sort of do a little bit of research and work with the data that's available to find out where those areas are and sort of address their students towards those areas, of course. So
exactly. I'm speaking at a commencement this week for a school in the Philippines, and here's a school that's graduating 100 kids, and I say, if we could figure out a way to get those 100 kids on an airplane and fly them to where I live here in Nashville, they'd all be working. They'd all have jobs by the weekend. And it's just, how do we facilitate that and make that happen? And here we have companies in the US that are offering hiring bonuses of 1,000, 2,000, even more. And if we just take that hiring bonus and put that towards an airplane ticket, that'll get them here, and they'll be working by the weekend. And how do we make that happen in that situation? And interesting point you're making.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Steve. Like I say again, it was thoroughly entertaining and hugely informative. So thank you so much for that. And I hope everyone, I'm sure everyone that is in attendance also feels the same and got a lot of benefit out of this. Please, if you're listening into this and you're not a researcher, but you know somebody that is a researcher within your institution, tell them about the link that will be available on the website to this presentation. Ask them to have a look at it, because we really want to get as many people using this data as possible. And like I said, it's a wonderful resource. We want to continue to sort of create that community approach to research across the IS network. So please sort of tell as many people as you can about these opportunities. But for now, thank you so much, Steve. I wish you well and good strength with the remainder of your activities today. I know that you're going into other things, so thanks for that. And thank you all for attending it. I really appreciate you finding the time to join us today. Thanks very much. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.